Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Should we start?
Hey everyone, yeah.
Okay, so hi everybody. So this is the database office hours in the new time on Wednesday. And yeah, the first point is mine, is about check constraints. So just a bit of context here. Currently, when we are trying to add a not null constraint to an existing table with many records, that might cause stability issues because when you add a not null constraint, simply it's going to scan the table to check if we have null values while we are keeping the exclusive lock on the table. So there is no efficient way to add a not null constraint. I mean, safe way to add a not null constraint to an existing table. But there is another concept in Postgres called check constraint that is you can actually create an invalid constraint on the table first and later on validate it. And the validation doesn't require extra locking on the table. And this MR is the first one is to fix a few null values in a few tables. And this is possible now because we have the structure SQL in place. So that's really cool. And I think Yanis had a comment about constraints.
Yeah, so I've checked. So you proposed in the review for that MR that we should run with lock retries when we execute in there. So let me check your comment. So yeah, so this alter table requires a lock for it's a very quick lock, but it may be blocked by other processes running and other queries, so it may time out. So what you propose there is to always run with lock retries. And my question was, because I'm also adding some helpers right now, I was checking, for example, that our helper add concurrent foreign key does not use with lock retries. And my question for all of you is, should we update it to also use with lock retries inside the helper method?
Yeah, so at some point we should start updating the helper methods, but we have to be very careful what we wrap exactly with this block. We should look into each method that we execute and check what kind of locks are being acquired here and how long will this operation take. For example, when we are filling up data, when we add a new column, we should not wrap this with lock retries with other statements. So we should always be very careful how we use this helper method. But in your case that you linked in the question, we can easily wrap the alter table statement with lock retries, and that would make this add concurrent foreign key helper method more stable, safe to use.
So yeah, the other approach will be to require that the add concurrent foreign key is wrapped with lock retries inside the migration. So there is a balance. So we could say that some migrations, some tables are safe to use it without lock retry and not have it inside the method. I don't know. So that's why I'm asking what the opinion of everyone. Do we enforce this inside the helper, or do we leave it per case in the migration?
So I think we cannot do it on the migration level because we disabled so this migration, what we have now, this add concurrent foreign key requires several steps. And one of the steps is the constraint validation. And that can run for several seconds, right? And for that, we don't want to run in the same transaction as the add foreign key statement, because the lock will be on the table, the lock will be kept until the transaction finishes. So in this special case, we should only specify with lock retries for the alter table statement when you add the constraint.
Okay, okay. So for everyone to know, I'm currently working on adding helper methods for adding in general check constraints. So I'm going to add some helper methods to allow us to add a constraint, check a constraint, validate a constraint. Those will be generic helper methods, and then we can create more specific ones. So we will have to pass the check clause as a string because it's generic. That's why I was asking. So in this case, I will have the lock retries inside the helper method. And okay, we can discuss more in the review.
Adam, I know you were keeping track of the timings for some of the uses of the lock retry helper in the past. Do we have more data on that, or to tune the timings better?
So every morning I'm just checking the Kibana logs for new items and adding to the issue. I think I have it here. At the previous office hours, I have it. Give me a sec. And that's pretty much all the examples we have from GitLab.com. No, I cannot find it. I will link it later on the database Slack channel. And so far, I've seen a few examples where actually it seems like, I mean, I cannot say it for sure, but it seems like we had several retries. And I'm hoping that it actually helped preventing statement timeouts, but of course, I'm not 100% sure about it, right? And so far, I don't have any suggestion to change the timings. I can maybe create a spreadsheet where we can easily visualize the examples, what we already have. But apart from this, I think we are pretty safe it's pretty safe to use this helper method with the current setup.
I would think that we would have a reason to change the timings if we repeatedly see the helper fail, in the sense that it ends up running the statement without any lock timeout. I think this is the sort of the last step it would take if anything else fails. If that happens more often, we should probably look at the timings, right? But in other cases, when it's working fine, I don't see a reason why we would change that, right?
Yes, I might add a bit of improvement to the logging. So when we cannot acquire the lock, it would be nice to check what kind of locks we have on the table and maybe keep track of the lock ID if there is something like that. And maybe log that, hey, we failed to acquire the lock for 5 times already, and it's always the specific lock ID. And then we can kind of see that, hey, probably there was a long-running transaction somewhere, and that's why we couldn't acquire the lock.
Cool.
Okay, the next one is Yanis about a query.
Yeah, so this is a review, and this was a discussion we had with Tiger. So this was a query that it was initially at 10 seconds, and they optimized it to below 1 second, but it's still at 100 milliseconds. which is a lot. It's not fast. And from what we can see, it cannot be optimized more. And the discussion there was that because this is a daily summary that they want to generate, that a possible solution will be that they can cache the results and use them so that this query runs only once per day or something like that, or once per 12 hours or whatever. So my question there was, what's your opinion on that? What do we do with such cases? Caching or do we propose creating a materialized aggregate table and asynchronously loading it, or I don't know? It's an open question.
Is it running in a background job usually, or is it on a screen?
So in this case, it was not. It was just a query that it will run whenever the page loaded. So we had a discussion about whether it could be cast or not, or what are the options. Because even though that update brings the running time from 10 seconds to below 1 second, it still is a lot. And we generally strive for below 100 milliseconds. So that's, and yeah, I wanted you to check this and think about it also.
Is that feature behind the feature flag? Because I noticed we were saying that we still want to understand if the feature is going to be used a lot. Are we hiding that behind the feature flag, or is it like enabled?
I'm not sure. I think I'm not sure. I cannot recall. I have to check.
That's fine.
Let's say that it's not. Let's say that the generic use case. So they have an API call or something that takes a lot of time, but it's something that we can cache, whether a solution using caching is acceptable or not. And then my second question there is that even if we accept such a query, when you check the query in the model, you're not sure that caching will be used. So there was a discussion there that, okay, we will use it, we will cache the results and everything will be okay. But how do you enforce that behavior?
So I had an idea. So the problem with long-running queries that you can easily run into statement timeouts depending on your group. So GitLab org group is a fairly large group. We have several subgroups and projects, but it's quite easy to have a group that is larger than GitLab, and that could easily affect the performance of the query. And yeah, one suggestion could be that, I noticed that we are querying a date range. So executing few smaller queries could probably work. It would be safer against the database, but it might increase the loading times because it has to execute more queries, parse the results, build the result object, and it might have some extra overhead on the front-end rendering side. So that could be one idea. And the other one is, like, I've seen this pattern quite often, that we have a group specific query where we simply do a giant subquery on the project IDs. And this is pretty much everywhere because we have this nested group relationship. And if we store the root namespace ID, basically the top group on the table, we might be able to improve the performance simply because you have one number, an ID to scan from the index and not multiple, let's say, project IDs in gitlab.org. I mean, the GitLab org group has, I think, 800 projects. So that's a bit, that can be quite heavy. And I think Andreas has a comment about partitioning.
Yeah, that would sort of naturally align with what we were discussing for partitioning. And because we also consider root namespace as a partitioning key, and that already means that we would have to add this information to a lot of tables. And sort of what comes with that is that it's a denormalization, and when you start to move projects across their top-level namespace, all of a sudden you have to update a lot of data because you have to touch all those records and update that. So that might be a problem coming out of that, but I think we're also heading in that direction for partitioning.
So I think updating a tons of records at once is not an option. So it will be like eventually updated asynchronously.
Yeah. So in the example that we looked at, it looks like we're going to change the feature that allows you to move a project across a namespace and make that a background operation. So you would see it move after a while, or have all the data after a while only. I think part of that question, Yanis, also was, do we accept runtimes like 800 milliseconds with the argument that, hey, this is going to be cached later? That's obviously a trade-off, right? So if that was a feature that is still behind the feature flag and we control it better, maybe that's not a problem. In general, I would rather try to push back or try to optimize that better so that we don't see those 800 milliseconds. I don't know if that's possible in this case, but we should strive for better runtimes because even if that is cached, you still have those long-running queries, and that's a bad sign, so to say, or a smell. And if we manage to optimize that, that would be good.
We could also push like for a feature flag there if we are not sure, or if we cannot improve like the execution time. So that way we are kind of safe by having a feature flag.
Yeah, it sounded from the conversation that MR, it sounded like we were exploring that feature anyway. So using that as an argument that we don't spend a lot of time in the design or in optimizations, just to find out if we actually want to use that or want to do that feature at all. So perhaps that's a good way of putting that behind the feature flag.
Also, as an experience, for example, usage, but it was always caching null value because it never worked properly. I mean, caching a broken query usually also means you are sometimes caching the broken values, which is, I think. Yanis, I had another idea. Is this query with generate series? Is the query which I'm looking at, like I want to, the one which is aggregating on the date calendar and the generate series? Another approach will be that in some other projects, we were using a generated days table, like until 2050. So you add there a generated days table with an index on the day, and if the join is the problem there, slowness, that could maybe increase the 800 millisecond, decrease the duration.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I tried a couple of iterations by using a CTE directly in a query and similar approaches, but the query cannot go below 600 milliseconds, to tell you the truth. So it's not like it can go way down. So at least from what I can see, if you have any ideas. But so that's why I'm discussing in general. Let's say that we have this query. It's not like I want everyone to find the solution now. That cannot go below 600, 700. What are we doing?
I mean, in other cases, we had to rethink the whole idea with the product team. Like that query doesn't work. Could we only have a query for a limited time frame, for example, limited by some other ideas? anyway, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I mean, that's kind of, you cannot argue against.
Another dimension is I guess the frequency of that query, right? If that is something we will be doing in background once a day or so, it may not be as much of a problem as this is something the user can trigger.
Yeah, that's why I was also asking about another approach to caching will be materializing an aggregate table, just running once per day the aggregates for the previous day, and you are set to go. You don't care if it's 100 milliseconds. It's once and it's in a background task. Do we do it at all at the moment? I'm fairly new. Have we done this approach anywhere?
Maybe project statistics is similar. So this is where we gather statistics for a project, obviously. And this happens in the background too. Like we update that table and then we use it to query more efficiently. Do we have other cases where this happens in background? We aggregate.
For namespaces too, we do it that way. For the namespaces statistics, we do it in an aggregated way through a background job.
And it's important to do that in background because what we had before was basically a record that was being updated whenever the underlying data changed, and that serializes all the transactions on that counter. So that's why it has to go into the background.
We also have one about, so it keeps track of the highest role of a specific user. It's used for statistics on the instance level, like how many developers you have, how many reporters you have. That's also like a aggregated table. If there is nothing else, then we can go to the next point. Andreas?
Oh yeah, sure. I was just curious about the structure SQL change. And I just wanted to ask if there was any like pains that you were running into. We didn't get a lot of feedback on the issue I linked in there. So I take that as a good sign, but is there like trouble coming from that or any experience you want to share?
I think we've seen with Alper one MR where the author had moved some columns in a create table in the wrong position, and we had to fix it. I don't know why, but
yeah, that created, yeah, it created a lot more problems. So an author reorders alphabetical order by hand and breaks it, and all other MRs are now suffering, and their structure SQLs are having redundant changes. And structure SQL is more verbose than schema RB, and it's becoming harder to keep track of what changed, what not changed. I mean, everything is good. Just when you look at it, like a create table, for example, makes a lot of changes, right? Now, and for the author, it becomes very difficult to follow like what's happening.
Yeah, but as long as authors structure.sql is auto-generated and we do not manually change it, we should be okay. Am I right?
Totally. That's why I think, first of all, Toon is working on an MR now. He assigned me on fixing structure SQL. I also updated the with Myra and Adam the review guidelines so that people check rerun their down and up migrations again, just to see that the changes they do are cleaned back. And if they do it, they will see that all the confusing structured SQL changes they see are disappearing suddenly in the down method. And that could give them a way to discover redundant changes. But overall,
or changes that are sometimes it's hard to see what changes relate actually to your migration and which ones don't, right? And then you have to pick the ones that relate to the migration. I thought we should be doing that in CI eventually. I linked an issue for that because currently we don't have it in CI, and you would be able to add a migration and not pick the right changes to structure SQL and just push that, and we would merge it because it requires manual review. And the trouble from that is that when this gets merged, then you can't say that any of the existing systems would deviate from installations that are new, right? The ones that bootstrap from structure SQL, they have a different schema than the ones that execute the migrations. And this is something we should prevent. Perhaps we can do that in CI, and then yeah. When you say somebody was reordering columns alphabetically, what's the reason for that?
Just to escape a comma. I mean, so if you like, let's say you have four V. I mean, let's say you have four V's and you want to put them just without adding, changing another field with a comma. So you want to do it right in the wrong place so that in structure SQL, you see your changes. You have 4 columns changed, and you didn't change another line by adding a comma. That's, I think, the logic which happened.
Okay.
You know that comma type of changes are usually confusing the authors in that you look at and you see you change some line which you didn't change, and I think that created the feeling that I should now do manually, you know. Change only my own columns, but that was wrong.
Did we merge that in the end?
Yeah, that was merged. So CI didn't catch it, and at the end we fixed it with Yanis by hand again.
Okay. Yeah.
Manually editing again, and because it really annoys all other MRs like during the whole day, and a lot of reviewers get confused to see the same field names in their structure SQL.
It's not only that. Whenever I run a migration up or down, then my new structure is not consistent with the master. While now I'm playing around with migrations and I have no issues as long as I'm on par with master.
Tony, you want to talk about your new MR, which is Tony's I think busy. You want to talk about your new MR, which is going to help with that, you know, resetting your structure SQL by fetching the commit from the master or branch. Sorry, I think Tony is not available.
I think you're just muted. At least I can't hear you.
I don't think he's talking to us, or perhaps he does. Ah, okay.
No one can hear me?
No.
Now we can hear you.
I cannot hear you for a while.
Everybody responds.
I thought that you were talking on the phone.
Okay, I think I'm better now. Is that correct?
Perfect.
For some reason, the volume was very low. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So I was working on merge requests where exactly where the schema is checked out, which where your branch started from. Then it resets the test database to that version of the schema, and then it runs your migrations again. So only the changes you're doing in the migrations are applied to the structure.sql, and then you can do the diff on that. So I added a script for that in the merge request I linked, and what it also does, it runs a script in CI to see if there's no diff between what the script does and what you have committed to Git.
Oh, perfect. And that would basically render CI broken if it doesn't match.
Yeah, I had some trouble because CI is running against the merge result, so you need to make sure not. Yeah, it's weird because the structure SQL you're committing is not correctly to what the merge result will be, and then, so I'm hoping I'm not running into edge cases where yeah, where the order is different for some reason. So we maybe need to toy with it a little bit more before we make it fail hard, or at least have like an easy shutdown switch if it turns out not to have some issues with some merge requests.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's really useful to have in CI and also locally. Nice.
Yeah, it's gonna give the reviewers a way to say, hey, you can reset like that. I mean, that's a trouble now. How do you reset?
Okay.
Cool.
Next one, also Andreas.
Right. Just jumping back one more time to structured SQL, there was one announcement, in case you missed that, regarding the backporting. I also linked that on the agenda, so it's a bit more difficult to backport because the older versions still have schema RB. So that we have to be mindful of that. I wanted to just drop a link to a conversation that's currently happening for GitLab.com, which may be interesting to follow. So currently, we have pretty much everything behind PG Bouncer. So that's our load balancing solution for GitLab.com Postgres. And there are a few exceptions from that, namely the deploy and a few other things like some monitoring. And also when you open a console, you don't go through PG Bouncer, but you go directly to the Postgres instance. And that's starting to become an issue because we run out of connections. And then, there's a connection limit, and then that actually can affect our HA solution, where Patroni, the HA manager, doesn't have enough connections anymore and basically panics and then triggers failovers. And so we'd like to avoid that.
There are many additional issues there. We're resolving them. Sorry for interrupting, but connections is primary source of problem, of course. Connection spikes. So right. we will solve it. It will be better, but still connection. If you can find this and solve this problem, it will be very helpful. That's why I joined. I saw it in the document and decided to join. I have a overlapping meeting, but this is very, very important thing.
Good timing. So one of the problems that I see, but this is only related to the deploy host, is that we can't run migrations through PG Bouncer unless we find a solution to that problem. But the issue is that in PG Bouncer, we run it in transaction pooling mode. And that means whenever you start a transaction, you're going to stick to the same session and settings and all that until you commit. And that allows you to do config changes like set statement timeout or set block timeout or stuff like that. And that is valid until you commit. But unfortunately for migrations, we're not always inside a transaction scope because we do things like creating indexes concurrently, adding foreign keys concurrently. So whenever we disable the transaction scope, we don't have a transaction running. And then when you issue set config stuff, so set statement timeout, you can't be sure that this is going to be applied to any of the consecutive queries that you run, because you might even end up on a different database host. So that's one of the problems there. Do you see any solution to that migration problem?
Yeah, I commented there as well. So when we connect using pSQL to Postgres, there is a way to, for example, it's also related to other options like application name. There is a problem when we see in the log that application name it is not known at connection time. Why? Because later it's set using set command, right? So first client connects with unknown name and then it sets application name to something. This is also a problem. It's very related. It also can be solved. If we connect using pSQL, there is PG options, upper score, PG options. We can use PG options and set application name, statement timeout, log timeout, anything. And it will be already initialized in libpq level, in driver level already. It will be applied immediately like before connection established, and this is very useful, and it will be applied to this session. If you are in transaction mode in your work through PG Bouncer, it will be also applied. Maybe it will not work, right? We stick with PG Bouncer. So okay, here I should check with PG Bouncer before advising it to move this solution to Ruby. Okay, sorry. So I'm not sure about PG Bouncer. It definitely works when we do connection, direct connection, but PG Bouncer may have may lose some of this, right? So yeah.
Perhaps there's a way of doing that. I tried it with PG Bouncer, and even when you send a query string that consists of a set timeout and a different query, then the set does not apply automatically.
Well, it's because different connections. Did you try PG options with -C or -O? I don't remember exactly. PG options and then string inside it lowercase o equals log timeout or statement timeout equals something. It works. I will check with PG Bouncer and follow up. If it works for pSQL, next question will be how we can use the same approach for Ruby connections. It should be possible, I think, because it's also libpq. But if it doesn't work with PG Bouncer, the only option which I see is left is to use set local inside every transaction, which is less pleasant, I would say, right?
If you're using transactions, but if you don't, then
well, we always use transactions if it's oh, okay, I see what you're saying. If it's like separate statements, okay, right. But we still can do something, and okay, I see what you're saying. We can wrap it to additional transactions, even if it's a single command. We can hack with database migration helpers and wrap it every step with set statements. But it's not, as I've said, it's not pleasant already. not so. It's less fun. So, but still possible. Or we can continue working directly, but we will limit connections. We just discussed that we are limiting on GitLab.com. We are limiting GitLab user, which is most common for all connections. We will set limit at user level, so sailing will be lower. We have 300 right now. I think it's enough actually, but in nearest future we will raise to 500 for GitLab.com, and we will limit GitLab application user, database user, to 270. Other 30 users, quota of 30 users will be left for other connections. So these spikes are dangerous. Actually, if you just this failover is bad, but during spikes we have degradation of performance, and it's not fun at all. Like everything is slow. So.
Perhaps worth asking the.
Sorry, Andreas. There is one more option. I forgot about it. One more option is to use different user. Okay, if it's right, and apply limit for different user. We will need to take care of ownership of objects. For example, if we create table and we are operating from different user, maybe we will need to pass ownership to in the end. Maybe, but it's possible. We can limit this user. If it's for database migrations, we can limit it to have just one or a few connections, and it will be very safe, even if it's direct. It doesn't matter. So this is.
I agree.
I see this as useful to separate roles.
Exactly. The problem we don't have any permission management today. If that is ownership or grants, we don't do anything of that. That's because we always use the same user anyway. So. We would have to do something about that, I guess.
Right. Another big topic, and it's also important, right?
Yeah. Out of curiosity, the problem with GitLab.com, it's only related to the primary instance, right? So when you go to a pSQL console on a replica, sure, you also need a connection for that, but that's not the main cause of concern at the moment. what is causing failovers, for example, because
Master
failover
is-
is always
Right.
triggered on the master.
What happened on March 30, I spent many hours investigating it. So it happened actually a lot of connection spike. Actually, GitLab database user reached only to 230 maybe, but other users consumed a lot. And first, Patroni couldn't establish connection. And this is already a problem, but we have 90 seconds to resolve this problem, 90 seconds TTL, time to live for each. But then failover happened earlier actually than 90 seconds because console also had issues, and because of misconfiguration of Patroni, console decided that it's a problem and interfered with Patroni behavior, and failover happened earlier because node was slow in general, master node. Other nodes are not affected in this case. And I checked limits also on, I analyzed it's a separate topic. We don't have good monitoring for per user analysis, historical data. So I needed to set up my own poor man's scripts to analyze, and analyzed replicas as well. They are totally fine, and they need much less connections than master.
Okay. So also the message is that if you have access to the database console, which a lot of people have, you can still safely just open that session, and it's going to connect to a replica, and it's not directly causing. It's not a cause for concern for this topic, right?
It's a separate.
Okay.
So any guesses what caused these spikes, and how to solve this and get rid of these spikes? Because limiting is a solution, but not a good solution, right? Because database user is shared, and so these spikes will affect user experience. I mean, users, normal human users on GitLab.com, right? So any guesses how to solve this problem of spikes? No. Okay, we will try to do something.
I guess the limiting is a good approach to that, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
you have a better grasp of how many connections you reserve for important users, for Patroni, for example.
For Patroni, just one connection, and we're not going to limit it. We didn't see problems with it, so we are limiting only application user to 270 out of 300, and we are limiting GitLab super user, which usually just one connection. I don't know where from. We will put 10, and we are limiting GitLab PSQL user and put 20. 20 should be enough. Most humans go using this GitLab PSQL when doing sudo GitLab PSQL command. So 20 is enough, as I've already said and explained in the issue. It should be enough, and if we reach 20, it's better to drop some sessions, because it's not a good idea to consume more connections out of we have, right? So we are limiting only 3 users in this case. But okay, connection spikes are going to be continued, right?
Alper, you have the next point.
Next question.
Localize?
Nikolai, nice to see you. We always talk to you on the database lab. So
yeah,
but we don't know, at least I don't know who you are, what your role is, and whenever we have trouble there, we ping you. Could you introduce yourself?
Well, sure. I was doing database reviews many months ago already. So maybe we participated in some calls before, but it was long ago. Not with all of you, of course. So you can call me just Nick, and I have 15 years of Postgres experience, 20 years with databases in general, so quite a lot. I came from Russia, moved to California 5 years ago, and I was briefly an employee of GitLab for 2 months in 2018, and then moved to contract work because I love to build startups. I created 3 social networks in Russia and sold my 3rd one just last autumn. It was fun. And right now I'm building Postgres AI company. It's a very small company. We are building tools which I want, like I see these tools should help to deal with Postgres better. The main idea is let's verify all we do on large databases to have better understanding before we move to deployment. This is very basic idea. I practiced it a lot. I felt how things improved when cloud adoption raised. For example, on RDS, it's very easy to spin off clone, like replica and promote it. It will be slow in the very beginning. There are solutions to that, but it's like complicated, but it's already very good. And for example, when I already told, when I did partitioning 3 or 4 years ago in 9.4, I think, with triggers and so on, I did a lot of iterations and I enjoyed working with clouds. And I think it's when I thought it should be automated and we need to have faster iterations, verifying all our steps on full-sized data sets, if you have access, of course. So, and just then I started to work on it, and Postgres AI is a like set of automation tools, and actually right now it's already a platform to automate these like theme provisioning when you have theme clones. It doesn't suit for all tasks. For example, you cannot use it for load testing, but you can check particular explain migrations, anything like which consume only one or couple of backends. So it's already, I'm quite satisfied with current state, but there are much more plans and we are doing some things. I'm quite excited to see what future brings us. So with GitLab, I have contract and help from time to time with mostly on infrastructure side. But I'm glad to see that database group team is so big already, because I remember how it was hard to react to a lot of code review requests, database review requests. It was very hard to combine. So I'm happy to see that so many of you are doing database related reviews. And of course, if you're using Joe in Database Lab channel, I'm always happy to help if something is not right there. By the way, do you know that you can do hypothetical indexes there? You can, I promised Andreas to describe it in documentation, but it's not yet described. You can just check hypo command. If you need to wait many hours, maybe it's better to do hypothetical index, check then, and then only then build huge index. Because maybe you will not have good plan, so don't do this big index. Right, hypo command. You can start with help as usual, without as lab.
But running hypothetical indexes, is it much different from running in your development environment when you have no data? You can also create the index. Does it give plans better than that? Like more realistic?
Yes, hypothetical index is using the same statistics of Postgres of the same thing clone, which is full size as it will be on production. Compared to real index, you will only lack execution and buffers numbers, real numbers, but you will see the structure and planned cost, right? You theoretically, you can do it on your small instance on your laptop or something, but you need to use some Japanese guy created some extension to export and import statistics. This is interesting, but it's like, it's not popular, not popular approach. So in this case, you could import production statistics to your small database without real data, and then hypothetical indexes would work in your case as well. But with Joe, you have whole database, and hypo command just save you time. You can, I call it sneak peek of plan, right? So you can check a couple of options of index, and you see plan is good, cost is fine, structure is better, and then let's build it and verify it completely. This is, I understand that nobody is using it yet, but it's quite interesting thing, and we had requests, so we implemented it.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, we have created over 100 indexes as telemetry team, but we are doing the last one today. So
wow,
it's a bit, yeah,
cool.
If you can link to hypothetical indexes in the database.
You mean to help, right? This
is just, or we can just search the documentation.
Yeah, there is documentation on my website, but I promise to extend documentation on GitLab because there we also have documentation, right? We have, it's here, I think, hyper. Okay, I will put a documentation hypothetical. Yeah, I put a link to the document.
Thanks a lot for introducing yourself too.
Sure. By the way, I think some of you experienced issues with reset. I yesterday upgraded and bug fix applied. And I still don't understand under which circumstances you lose Postgres instance and your session is broken. But at least in this case, reset will work because recently it didn't work. So if you're in bad situation, you issue reset. And even if Postgres is lost, reset will work, and you can at least start from scratch, not waiting 2 hours of expiration.
Anyone had it except Alina? Did anyone? I never lost.
I had it a few times.
I saw 2 people had it multiple times, and it seems that some behavior led to it. I need to investigate which one. Of course, it's a bug, definitely. But right now you can do reset at least, not pinging me, because even if you ping me, I cannot restart job because it will lose all sessions. It cannot maintain sessions yet. So, okay. Oh, checkup is broken. It's another story. It's okay. It's a little bit broken. We don't have new checkup in issues infrastructure team because there are some changes in permissions and it's not yet resolved. But we will fix it, I think. And one more highlight. I think in a couple of days I will upgrade also, Joe, and you will have activity command and terminate command. In case if some previous command you don't like it, you will be able to see like previous activity content actually, right, with command, and then terminate some wrong create index maybe or something like this. It's also maybe useful.
Nick, what do you think if you?
Cool.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so I had a few times when I accidentally created a large index, and I had to wait half hour, an hour to get that done. So this would be a really useful feature.
You can do reset, but you will lose other changes. Maybe.
Yeah.
And also, if you just type any query, why doesn't it default to explain? Is it impossible, or is it? Or is there other things you can do with Joe, like chat?
Maybe it's a good idea if it starts with keyword like select, update, delete, insert.
A lot of people are doing that.
It's
just
good.
typing, not seeing it, typing, not seeing.
Yeah, it already suggests to add explain it but maybe we can just do it not suggesting. It's a good idea. I will discuss with my team. Maybe we'll do it. Good. Thank you for feedback.
What's the best way of capturing feedback like this, or any feature requests for database labs?
There are options. We can open an issue in GitLab, on GitLab anywhere you want, like in infrastructure repository or anywhere. You can also go to you can talk to me directly or in Database Lab channel, or you can go to, we have a separate Slack actually. It's called, I can tell you where it is. It's to discuss Database Lab and Joe bot specifically. Slack to discuss. It's like database community Slack, Database Lab community Slack we call it. And Joe, I've put link to document. So there you can meet other people who are using these tools as well and discuss it publicly. Also, we can actually we added you can put feedback to our repository. We develop everything on GitLab, of course, because we like it's much better than GitHub. Also because it's using Postgres, not MySQL. So we have a repository, and you can create issue there. Actually, we've got a couple of merge requests in the past from GitLab people. So they didn't finalize to be included yet, but maybe they will. So you can open issue there as well. And actually, when you start session with Joe, there is a link there. You can just click the link in the forward, in welcoming words. So, okay, I'm not going to consume a lot of time for this call. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I think this was actually the last point. So if there is nothing else to add or mention, then I think this is it for today. Yeah, have a nice
Awesome.
evening / day, everyone, and see you in 2 weeks or next week when there is the APAC. I think it's already set up for Asian Pacific.
Oh, nice.
So
is it the same agenda or is it a different one?
I think it will use the same agenda. There was a discussion about it, but yeah, I'm not sure the event is already there or not. Maybe they will request it, Tiger or Kras. I'm not sure. All right, and see you later. Bye.
See you. All right.